He said, I was getting 100-pound. I don't even know what that is. Then he said he was getting 20 kilos of the C from a couple of sources. He said, I was running that to Texas. I guess that was where he was going to take it. He said he paid 12,000 a kilo here and selling them in Texas to his friend for 26,000 a kilo. So he said he made 280,000, and then I did that every month. That's what he said, until he was busted. Then he said he got a 10-year prison term for that. Then he was shooting skyrockets at his mom's house. I don't even know what that is. And one of them went sideways and lodged into a cypress tree, causing it to catch fire, which then started to catch his neighbor's house on fire. Then he said, I got up on the house and put it out, but the police said I was a hazard to the community because of all the house fires had wood shingle roofs. And then he said he was arrested for fire inhabited building because his neighbor and her daughter were in the house. And then he said he got wrongful burning for the cypress tree burning and got charged for possessing and discharging skyrockets. All of these were felonies. And even though it was an accident, I was tried and convicted. That's what he said. And he received a 6-year, 8-month prison term for that. He said he got out and decided he was going to be the best drug dealer in town. Then he said he started cooking the M stuff on the stove for a certain biker group. I was cooking about 10 pounds a week, he said. I made over $1 million in around 8 months. One of his previous girlfriends got busted and made a controlled buy of 9 grams of the M for $100. She took it out to the cops outside, and he tested it and took in Abbott to a judge, and a warrant for search and seizure was approved. They raided his house and caught him with 11 pounds of the M and 9 pounds of the W, 3/4 of an ounce of the C, and 10 grams of the H, about 1,000 narcotics in pills. It's too much stuff he has on here. So then he said they got 300,000 in cash from his safe when they caught him. And last but not least, he had 3 firearms. Then he said he got a 10-year prison term for that. After he got out and was on parole, he got caught with 3... I don't even know what that is, but he was caught again with the M and got 2 years for that. Then he said he got out and gave his, some officers, okay, so they tested him for the H, and yeah, he was guilty. Then he said she came back with the police and raided his apartment, so he got in trouble. They found more of this stuff in his girlfriend's room or something. And they wanted to give him life in prison for that. His brother and his mother talked to the district attorney, and he wound up getting a 10-year term for that tiny piece of H stuff they found. He said he studied law in prison and got an associate's degree for paralegal. He was working in a law firm office, and some super weird bad stuff happened, which caused his fiance to commit suicide. He began using more and more of the H stuff as a result, and then he said he blew through his bank account and was broke. He said he got fired from the law firm for making too many mistakes on legal briefs. And then he said to get money for his addiction, he began to rob banks and rob a bunch of them. Then he said he got busted for the bank robberies. They wanted to give him a 46 years to life at first. Sounds like he keeps going to prison his entire life. That's the kind of life he was living. The attorneys where he was working took the case free of charge. It took 3 years in the county jail to get the sentence down to 15 years. Then he said he got out of prison and enrolled in a substance abuse program, got off drugs, and now he's a 67-year-old man on SSI and disabled. And then he said he's free and sober and happy. It took 33 years of actual prison time to figure out that drugs suck. I wish I had learned sooner. It is what it is. I'm writing an autobiography of my life. I've named it Diary of a Dope Fiend. He said he's almost finished. There's so much more than what he's typed here, and everyone says it's going to be so great. So maybe I can be an author of some books. Only time will tell. Well, I'm glad he got himself together. But who knows? Maybe he will be going back because of how many times he went. So the next person said, how can Android users make extra income, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's a different article. Oh, okay, no. Here it is. This person said they ended up there because allegedly they had CUT somebody 43 times. It was the very first felony charge, and it was aggravated assault with a deadly weapon intent to hurt them. It was trying to give they were trying to give her life for her first felony for the first time, really being in serious trouble. After sitting almost 2 years, her lawyer got her out. They were able to establish that she had PTSD due to getting, she was in some type of domestic situation for 10 years of her life from her ex-husband. And so she blacked out when really upset, and she started, having some type of abuse go on with him. All she remembers of him is him punching her in the nose and remembering. Okay. So, yeah, okay. I'm skimming through this. So she says then she was only 30-something years old, and she said, can you imagine, it's been her life has been in prison, and you're only 30-something. That's a long time to be in prison. Now I'm a good girl. I don't mess with the, whatever that is. Okay, so that's how she got there. Next person. Some of these people, they don't sound too smart, to be honest. They said they've been to prison twice, both times over drugs. They said their first real stint started when they were only 23, and it was pretty scary. This was in a Texas state prison, and about as awful as it sounds. Gangs ran the place, and violence was just a fact of everyday life. While I was lucky enough to never get severely permanently injured, they said they got plenty of scars. Worst two are a 5.5 scar, one on their stomach from, a shank in prison, and then a noticeably bulge in their collarbone where it healed crookedly after being broke by a huge dude who wanted to get friendly, which I wasn't down with. Besides the human dangers, the prison itself was hazardous. Some areas were infested with rats, and they had roaches. This was their big risk everywhere. Then they said, I guess they're trying to say it would get hot in the cells. 115 was like the temperature at their prison. Then he said guys occasionally died when they were, I guess, put in the hole, I guess he's saying. Okay, so he said they had something called a hot box, where it is an isolated cell with direct sunlight. Okay, and that people don't survive it. That's what he said. Then he said one winter they had an outbreak that was terrifying. Half of the guards were so scared they wouldn't come into the block at all. Then he said a buddy of his in segregation said they went days without food during it. He said he never had any symptoms but would show positive for skin TB test, I think that's tuberculosis, test ever since, which was caused issues in his own right. He doesn't write very clearly. No wonder he ended up in prison. Then he said, the second time was in a federal prison up in Kentucky. It wasn't fun by any means, but was significantly safer. He said guards in the federal system are better paid and as a result much more professional and less corrupt. There were still some bad ones, but they were the exception rather than the rule. So his first prison seemed to be in Texas, where it was super hot. Then he said, you also had access to drug counseling and a GED program if you didn't graduate high school. He spelled GED wrong. They were underfunded, but I'd say there was much more focus on rehabilitation rather than just warehousing people. Then he said, don't get me wrong, there were still some gangs and violence. People who claim federal prison is like summer camp are mostly lying. The true club feds went away in the 80s. And then he said, this wasn't a fun place to be, but it also wasn't nearly as awful as his time in Texas. Okay. The next person. Let's see. Okay, so this person said what they did was violate every trust ever given. This person said they stole everything. Let me see. And drove drunk. That's what they said. So that's a DUI. They said they got busted with drugs. They said they had stolen cars. They were carrying weapons and just basically being a menace to society and a disgrace to their family in every way imaginable. They said they didn't care about anything, anyone, any law, or even getting caught. They said they didn't care about jail or prison. They said, I wanted what I wanted when I wanted it. And they said the consequences was loss of trust, freedom, and pain. They said they did this for years, but the point is he wants to make was that whatever he's saying there, he was trying to, this doesn't make any sense. I guess he used drugs to escape or something. Well, anyway, he said he's been out for many years now. He never went back and found a place in people and God that could help him address his real issues that were causing his behavior. He said he's been sober for a long time now and still struggles to be a better person sometimes. And that he has no desire to go back to any of the madness of his former life. Well, duh. Okay, let's see if we see something else interesting. Okay, so this person said, which time? That means they ended up going multiple times, which I guess people who do end up going, that sounds about right. They go multiple occasions. Okay, this person said, but seriously, I grew up in a family of drug dealers, they said, and as such, it was natural that they would follow into their family's footsteps. They said living that type of life opens you up to a variety of experiences one might not have otherwise become involved in. Then they said among the worst for them was when they were using the H. They said the first time was all it took. They fell very deeply and passionately in love with the H. And then they said as money was no problem, his buddy and him spent about $1,000 a day on something that's a C and a W. After doing this every single day for 8 months, he was like, yes, $250,000 was spent very easily, and that's on the low end, I guess, for whatever drug he's doing. He said up until the morning he woke up and had no drugs. He said he had not experienced what will inevitably happen, the withdrawals he's talking about. He said he thought he was going to die. He said it's funny, right when this happened, his connection was, I don't know what he's saying. So I guess he said he had no money, which means no drugs. I guess no money meant that he was forced to stop. Then he said he became a person who forged checks where he made 400,000, and then he said later he was arrested by the FBI and sent to jail. He said, as anyone knows that has been involved in the U.S. criminal justice system, once you have entered, there is no exit. That old revolving door just keeps opening for you, and it seems you can't never get out. Wow, that sounds very sad. He has some people agreeing with him. Okay, so the next person said they went to prison for 29 years for murder. They said of a 22-year-old that was abusing their sibling, their brother. And then they said they was in several different prisons, and the experience in each was different. They said the first one they was at Missouri State Penitentiary. It was the worst. They said at that place there's stabbings every day. You always had to be aware of everything because things would happen in a second. So then he said he had to resign himself, so he was okay, he was not mentally doing well. So, but after 5 years, he got transferred. He didn't think he was going to survive at that prison. There was still violence, but not nearly as much. And he said the prison was cleaner and had AC. He found a perk. That's funny. Looks like that's interesting. Let me see. These people have some stories. Wow. Okay, we're about to get into the next story. It's just so many. I scrolled down too low. Okay, but it looks like I found some new ones. Okay. What were you in prison for? Okay. This person said they were 9 years old and they took a front end loader because they was tired of walking. They said it was parked outside a shop and was a loader for a logging company. The trooper released him to his uncle. You know what's going to happen now? He got a whooping from his parents or something. Then he said 10 years old that he had taken a motorcycle and went to juvie. He said he did 3 days and walked out still a bad person, he said. He said, I went into foster care where he skipped from home to group homes for 2 years and went home to his mother at the age of 12. He said he had told his case manager, I'll keep running. 12 years old, and he said he broke into a class where he had taken food and got a probation officer. While on probation, he said he burglarized businesses and stole cars and 3-wheelers, 4-wheelers, trucks, and boats. He said he had taken a truck belonging to the telephone company and paid restitution. Then he said he burglarized a home and had taken their food, money, guns, and anything he thought he needed. It's too many on here. Okay, I'm just... So he said he burglarized 2 businesses too and got caught with 2 loaded firearms, and he was sentenced to 2 years but not to exceed his 19th birthday. He said he was 17 years old and still had 14 months until his 19th birthday. 18 years old, using a soda can. He used that to hurt himself. Okay. So then he was in the hospital. Jesus Christ. Okay, his story is just too much to it. I don't think I can continue to read this because it's It's just nothing but showing how psychotic the person is. Okay, on to the next story. Why can't these people have simple stories? This person said they're writing this anonymously and they are sure you'll understand. They said they went to prison for ignorance. They said they had operated a computer repair business. One of the computers was working. They were working on had child stuff on it. You know, bad stuff. Then they said they never viewed the stuff. They said they never knew it was there and they still don't know if it was or was not. Then they said his wife's ex-husband was a massive collector of that bad stuff. And it had been a really dirty divorce. They said their house had been burglarized or something. Our cars had been vandalized and her ex had even followed them around town a time or two with a rifle. Okay. So then he said one early morning the FBI entered their home and dragged them out of bed, you know, at gunpoint. They confiscated nearly 30 systems from their home and business and disappeared with them. I don't even know what that is. He said no search warrant was served, no Miranda rights were read, and only identification presented was a business card. And then he said that his wife and him could believe they were actually being visited by the real FBI officers and not a group of imposters. Okay. So then he said he spent 20 months in a tiny county jail, during which time he believed he had a stroke. No medical care was provided. Then he said in prison that he had been stabbed with a pencil after about 2 months at the jail and placed in solitary confinement from that point on, and no medical care was provided. I guess there's privileges in the real world, but not there. Then he said he was forced to accept a plea bargain to prevent his wife from being jailed for the possession of the stuff. Then he said 2 public defenders actually told him to accept the plea bargain or they will go after his wife. Then he said he signed a plea bargain accepting responsibility for possessing a photograph in return for a 3 to 5 year sentence. Ooh. Then after he accepted the plea bargain, he was removed from the county jail to a federal detention center. Then when he finally appeared before the judge, the prosecuting attorney requested he stand before the court and tell where he had gotten the picture before the judge ruled on his sentencing. He said he may have been able to accept responsibility for possessing the photograph convincingly, but he was unable to lie about obtaining it convincingly. His sentence was 120 months. He was shipped and processed to a satellite load after a half a year of he was harassed by guards and inmates and was shipped to a low security prison for his protection. After being, he said, assaulted at the low for being a chomo is what they called it. He said it's a prison term for what he did. He was shipped to a medium security facility. The entire time he was locked up, he was required to speak to staff members who wanted him to accept responsibility for his deed. Many years he spent being mentally assaulted with the goal of forcing him to accept his responsibility for his conviction. There was no appealing his case. One of the clauses in his plea bargain stated he would not say he had been poorly represented. Another clause prevented him from filing an appeal. It is his opinion that the only thing the lawyer represented was his own interest. Now, as a free person, he said he's required to go through group therapy weekly with the intent on getting him to accept responsibility for his crime, even though he has passed 3 separate polygraph examinations to prove his innocence. You may ask, is there justice in America? He can only speak to what he's experienced. Perhaps if he had been guilty, this could be considered justice, perhaps. Okay, what a sad story. He said he dealt with the shame of his conviction by believing he was convicted for being ignorant of how the justice system works, ignorant about how public defenders work, ignorant of too many things that directly affected him. He said he's been shunned by his parents, siblings, and niece and nephews, stepchildren, and grandchildren, and his in-laws, and every friend but one. He said he lost his baby sister to cancer and his grandparents to old age. He said his wife, bless her, is here by his side for the remaining by her husband's side. She is shunned too. And then he said he has a lawyer willing to take his case to the Supreme Court, and she has won a few cases similar to this. Whether he wins or loses, he said he prays every day for simple acceptance from his fellow man/woman. But he said even if he had been guilty, he has paid his dues, yet due to the nature of his accusation, he still gets treated like dirt. He said, I don't say this with any agenda except to perhaps educate people to a simple fact. Whether or not a person was actually guilty of a crime, after that person has paid their penalty, no one has the right to continue to judge them. No one except the higher power. Again, thanks for the upvotes, they help. Then he said it is now 5 years after his release, and not much has changed for the better. He said, I guess he's fatigued over this. He said his mind goes on strike and leaves him in a daze. He said, let me see. His life was destroyed by our legal system. And then he said, update, 6 years after his release. I keep praying it'll get better. 7 years after his release. He said, I have some of the answers and see I need to clarify a few things. Miranda rights are only read if the suspect will be quoted in court. Warrants may not be presented when served. So much for my TV education. Then he said whether I was the person who obtained the picture or not, he said he was still the person in possession of them. Next thing said things are better. That's what he said. Number 5, to those who have a choice, do not ever accept a public defender. Wow. Then he said 9 years after his release, he has a lawyer now. He said he finally is able to submit a FOIA request. There was a confidential informer in his case. Because of the informer, his case had been sealed. Then he said also because of this informer, the warrant that had been signed and sealed by the magistrate, the warrant was expedited because it was believed he had the ability to destroy the evidence if allowed the chance to do so. He said currently the courts have ruled he no longer has to register as a sex offender list until the courts rule in his case. Okay, so he said he's not on that list no more. Then he said 11.5 years in prison, 5 years on supervised release, 9 years on the list of the bad list. And it appears the courts will now clear his record. Wow, I guess he had tough time. You know, that was a crazy story. This person said they used some type of tool and got someone 43 times. They said it was the very first felony charge, and it was an aggravated assault with considered a deadly weapon, intent to harm them. They were trying to give that lady life for her first felony for the first time, really being in serious trouble. After sitting almost 2 years, her lawyer got her out. They were able to establish that she had PTSD due to getting in a domestic dispute with her ex-husband. Okay. Let me see. Okay, we're just skimming through this because we're getting close to the end. You're not going to believe this, but this person said, but they did all the time for for 20 years for delivery of a lousy $10 bag of the H. They said they were sentenced as a career offender in the federal system. You can easily verify everything I'm about to tell you by looking at the federal sentencing guidelines. And then he said, anybody who has been convicted of 2 prior felony drug convictions or 2 prior felony violent convictions or 1 of each as a career offender. Okay. So this person said, okay, yeah, okay. So that's that part. I mean, that story, we'll check it out. But I don't understand what that part is, so maybe we should skip it. Okay. Okay, so another crazy story between a husband and wife. If a man said he got sentenced to 7 years and 9 months for hurting his new wife with a tool. It all happened so fast, didn't help. He said he was on drugs, did 5 to 9. I don't know what that means. Got, I guess, 5 to 9 years or something. Got a bit over 3 months left on parole, and then his sentencing is finally over. He said that's the worst thing he's ever did, but best thing to ever happen to him. Being away from society taught him so much about himself and what's important to him in life. Also was finally being able to kick the gear to the curb. He said it was a bit embarrassing. He just wants to put it out there that what he did was wrong. No justification behind the actions. And he's like, violence is not the answer. There's always another way. He's not ashamed of the man he is today, but he does live with regrets and took... he's saying to not take people's life, and still he's paying for this, to this day, for the stuff that he's did. He said karma is, a thing, and he's just like, take care of people. His writing's not very clear. Okay. This person said they were in prison for adultery, and they was in the Marine Corps station in Hawaii and was 19 years old at the time. They said they met a lady a little older than themselves, and early on they did not know that she was married, but after they did find out, it did not matter to him. He said he was in love. Her husband was in the Air Force, station TDY, and he ended up getting the lady pregnant. Her husband ended up catching us, and he said he got into a physical fight and won, but he was locked up and persecuted for what the military called adultery. But the official charge was having a relationship with a married woman, not his wife, and ended up doing almost 3 years in federal prison. Believe it or not, most states have a law against adultery but never prosecute anyone for it. Interesting. The husband wanted to take their children away from her and was offered a deal that if he were to testify that she was a negligent mother, that he would not get any time. And he said he loved the woman and could not do that. In 1962, it was hard to take children away from their natural mom. She did testify against him and instantly forgave her, as she had 2 other children to think of, and she was pregnant as well. After she delivered the baby, his mother ended up adopting him, and his parents raised him to adulthood. His name is Tony. Then he said he never saw her ever again, but did end up in touch with her and stayed in touch until her death a few years ago. He said he still loves her. Aww. Okay, so the next story. This person said as a senior prank, their high school had a tradition of stealing the statue from in front of the local Big Bob's Boys restaurant and putting it in their school. In his senior year, they guessed the manager at the restaurant had gotten tired of it, so he had that statue chained down to its pedestal with a heavy, dusty chain. Looks like a long story. And why can't he just get to the point? Okay, that story seems to be too long. Okay, so this is a story from a woman. Most people claim to be innocent while incarcerated, and then she said she was completely innocent. She said she was born in prison. The story of how her parents ended up in New York in 1970 varies upon whom you speak to. Some family members claim that her father was a member of the Weatherman Underground and that he made bad stuff to sell to the Black Panther Party. Others claim their incarceration was due to a fight they had with a landlord in Northern California. Others just claim ignorance. Okay, her story seems too long. Apparently, the event of her birth was a news event that was heard across the globe. Her mother said she received cards from people in Europe and Australia. Her parents or grandparents heard the story of her birth on the news. Walter Cronkite was the anchorman, is what she was told. Her grandparents had no idea where her mom was or that she was even pregnant. They were shocked when I don't even know how to pronounce that name, advised them that their daughter just gave birth to their granddaughter while incarcerated in New York and then was being held at Belleville Hospital. The following morning, the grandparents called social services in New York. They were told that yes, the story was true and that she was being held and considered abandoned. Immediately, they flew to New York. She said she was 5 weeks old when her grandparents came for her. They raised her. They were the ones she called mom and dad. Unfortunately, they have long passed, she said. Her mother and her speak regularly, and she has always been in her life, sort of. She is a wonderful person. Her father, she's met only 3 years ago. She said she was 43 at the time. He had been searching for her all her life. The ultimate joy her presence gave to him was outstanding. He was a wonderful man as well. She keeps in contact with both parents regularly. You may be curious as to how she feels about her early prison sentence. She said I was innocent. I don't recall. I didn't do it. I'm not sorry. I have turned out just fine besides of it being kind of a cool story. Sounds like she's speaking for her mother. Okay. Okay, so that looks like a long story. Wow. Some of these stories are just entirely too... This person said they murdered a man who was... Okay, no. Yeah, some of these stories, they're just too long. This person stole 42 cars. That's how they ended up there. I like how they got to the point. Okay. Again, this case is someone in possession of drugs. That's how they went. This person served 40 years in prison and they've done their time and they are tired of trying to explain that part of their life to everyone. What's interesting is they're not saying what they were there for. Okay. Another person ended up in prison while in high school. But they should just say immediately what they ended up there for. And this person is saying it's a scary place. They said they ended up there their freshman year. And that they were on the basketball championship team. But they don't really get to the point to how they ended up there. This person said they broke many laws and deserved it. When they hit hard times and couldn't pay child support, got caught up with the wrong couple of guys that seemed to have some ideals of how to make a little extra money. Yeah, I guess he's saying that's what caused him to go to prison. Okay. He's not good at writing. Okay, someone said something for abuse of pain pills. It's how they're writing this that's not making it so great. Okay. This person said they were arrested and convicted of felony and a misdemeanor offense in the state of Pennsylvania and 2 felony counts against the U.S. Yeah, but they're not really saying much more. So he said his actual crimes were robbery and assault of people who had drugs and theft of money and property from regular civilians. And the crimes were against average people. Something he said he'll always regret. And he will carry the guilt with him for the rest of his life. Well, duh. He said he was addicted to breaking the law. Okay. This person said murder of an innocent person with their hands. Okay. They said it was a mistake. Not on purpose. But they could not have proven it to be a mistake. And they said they didn't deserve the conviction. Really? Okay, so, okay. We'll probably do one more story. This person, she says she ended up there because of forgery. It started because she just turned 18 and was a server and moved into her own place. She didn't realize how hard it was to pay bills and live on her own and had rent due. So she started to change credit cards and to say she got a $15 tip instead of a $5. Well, it was working so well, I changed a check to $100 more. And after 2 months, then she said she got caught. Then while she was waiting to be sentenced for that crime, she got married in Kansas to someone she hardly knew and they wrote checks from his closed out and cashed them on his savings account. All this simple mistake, or what she thought, got her a total of 7 felonies, 8 misdemeanors, and 4 years and 8 months in prison. She says she's been out for 15 years with never going back and no new charges. That's the one thing she learned. Okay. This person said, okay. I'm trying to see what she did because she's not getting to the point. Okay, let me see. This person said they went because they weren't fast enough to dodge the cops. They were trying to break into a liquor store and then more cops arrived. Good story. Okay, so let's see if we can do one last story and then call it a day. Okay, this will be the last 2. This person said they were 45 when they first went to jail. There were more than a few reasons. Having all-night party at their house was one of them. Police informant neighbors didn't help. Having girls argue out front of your house in the morning didn't help. It was mostly because they were a drug dealer, having so many people coming in, going. Also, they were charged earlier for trying to disqualify other stuff. I don't even know what that means. The police had a warrant for their arrest and caught him with drugs. He said he was caught on a Sunday, went to court next day, no bail, straight to jail. Okay. Next person said they was given a 28-year sentence for burglary while armed as a repeat offender, of which they served 18 years, 2 months, and 4 days before they was sentenced on parole. They said they feel the need to expand on their answers, so they're adding this. In Wisconsin, armed burglary is a Class B felony and carries a maximum of 40 years. They said also they had a sentence enhancement for being a repeat offender, which adds another 10 years. Then he said he received 28 of a possible 50. 28 out of a possible 50. Okay, of 50 years. 28 years instead of 50, which was the maximum. He said he also had a felony assault charge, which he received 10 years of probation for. Okay. And he had a consecutive burglary conviction. Other factors were that he had 2 prior felony convictions that he received when he was in adult court at 16. So that was at age 16. He was given 18 years and 2 months. Goodness gracious. That's the majority of his adult life. And here's Mr. Fox, after talking about such negative stuff. We hope that you seeing Mr. Fox makes it all better, because if you guys enjoyed the video, please like the video, please subscribe to the video, and please share it and tell me how much you like Mr. Fox. And yeah, that's the end of how people ended up in jail. It was just a series of stories that I selected and read online.